Welcome to Success Redefined with Dr. Tony Warner. I'm Dr. Tony, mom of 5, psychotherapist, author, and mentor. Here, you're going to find insightful discussions spanning science, psychology, and soul as the personal and professional meet, and we explore the intersection of what really matters. So success can be redefined with connection, healing, and fulfillment in mind. The theme we focus on in our episode today is really around leadership, driven, high-performing, high-achieving leadership, a boat that many of us fall into. And I'm joined today by Enrique Costa Gonzalez, who served 26 years in the United States Navy within various leadership positions and now runs Triad Leadership Solutions as the CEO and has himself had many accomplishments in life. Together, we discuss barriers many of us driven, high-performing leaders hit on the ladder to success. And we also talk about ways that conventional success winds up making things harder for us, and how even we, Enrique and I, after many, many years of self and personal development, have and still can get caught up in the unhelpful versions of success that can either keep us stuck or make us feel stressed, and what can be done about it when that happens. We talk a little bit about faith and how we can interweave that into leadership and so much more. You can see that different versions, different definitions of success are kind of caught in the moment in some of this discussion and reframed just within this discussion that we have together today. Let's go ahead and hop on in. Hello, everyone. We have Enrique Costa Gonzalez with us. You want to say hello to everyone and let them know who you are and where you're located.
Well, Tony, thank you first of all for inviting me to be on the show. It's a true honor. A little bit about me. I live in Orlando, so anybody in Central Florida, welcome to reach out. But I love today's topic of leadership, obviously, but the undertones and the inner windings of faith.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And today we're going to dive into some leadership pieces of how we can redefine that leadership aspect of our lives in a way that helps us to feel successful, meaningfully successful, and how faith even comes into play with that. I do think some people struggle with that. And I want to tell you a little bit about Enrique and what even makes this topic so important to him. And it's important to me as well. Faith and leadership are two parts of my life that are just so interwoven into the very fabric of who I am. And I know Enrique feels similar, but in his own way. So Enrique is the CEO of Triad Leadership Solutions, LLC, and he served 26 years in the United States Navy. He was named on the power list of the top 200. He was number 76 of thought leaders to follow in 2021 and 2022 by People Hum, and a nominee of the top 30 global gurus list for 2021 and 2022 as well. He also in 2023 was one of the top 200 biggest voices in leadership by Leaders Hum. And he was on other things like the Executive Coach of the Year, Best CEO Mentorship and Leadership Development Firm. He's been part of the top 10 inspiring leaders of 2023 for his work on the leadership development arena that he's been putting so much time and energy into. I see you pour your time and energy into it for sure. And I only get a glimpse, right? He's also a best-selling author of 2 books and an award-winning podcaster himself. So he is a natural, right, at this podcasting thing. He's sought after with John Maxwell certified coaching in his background. He's also a trainer and a speaker, an avid mentor in 3 national and international organizations, which is just amazing. And so we are incredibly grateful that you are here with us today, Enrique. And it's clear, right, that you have a history and a passion around leadership, but it didn't just happen overnight, right? And so I want to start out by asking you If you were to look back to maybe the earlier years of your leadership journey, what was it that you thought success was at that time? Like, how did you define success as a leader earlier on in your leadership career?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because in the beginning, there were no pursuit of success. Actually, I was just a follower. I was trying to figure out my role in life. And through that process of following, I was able to identify some key people that were doing some things that were not followers. They were doing things that were definitely showing that they were leaders. It was a separate thing. When I was able to realize that, I said, wow, let me see what this leadership thing is about. And as I was starting to pick that difference out, I realized that not all of those people in that position were even qualified to be there. And that's where the real interest came because I was as a follower, I was on the receiving end of both. But unfortunately for me, more on the poor leader side. So then I was able to see somebody that was led by a great leader and then see me being abused by a poor leader. And I said, oh, hold up. It's two different things, even in that world. And so, how do I, as a follower, become that guy and not this one that's beating me down? And so that's how that interest came in. And then I started to see that this person was after these things called success. And that's how all that started.
It's so interesting because there's a lot of self-awareness in what you're sharing right now, and I'm curious because we all have the ability, right, for self-awareness, but we sometimes struggle in different
Right.
areas of our life around this self-awareness. Were you this self-aware back then as you are now reflecting it back to us?
I was, except that it was from an angle of see, I grew up in the Bronx. It was from an angle of, "Oh, no, you didn't, right? Oh, no, you ain't doing that to me." So I was more street smart than I was self-aware. I was more aware of my surroundings than I was of myself because I unfortunately repeated a lot of what was done to me. I remember in boot camp, they put me as the leader for the entire company, and I was often regarded as harsh to the point where and I don't think I've ever said this, they had planned to, uh, blanket party. I don't know if anybody knows what a blanket party is, but it definitely ain't a toga or anything like that. It's they wrap soap in in a blanket, and they hold you down, and they beat you with the soap. So, that was what was, in store for me. So, as I reflect back now, I said, "Man, I was just a sounding board and then a repeater for the verbal abuse that leaders had on my life." And I was just repeating that. So, I wasn't self-aware, I was just aware of what was going on.
You used a word earlier too. You used the word follower. And
Mhm.
follower, I think, for those that have really strived to be a leader, really pride themselves on leadership, it can be received in a negative way, the follower, right, as a label that we use. But the way that you're describing your use of the word follower. You were a follower when you were starting out, but also that you were street smart. The word that's coming to me is you were observant.
Mhm.
That you had these observer lenses on. Now, of course, the way we observe the world is colored by many things.
Right.
Right.
But it sounds like you were very observant, be it
Mhm.
because you had to be, right, for survival, or because you wanted to be out of curiosity. And I think maybe it's both of those things. Would you say that word fits for what you're describing here?
Yeah, perfect, because my first job in the Navy was to be an observer. In meteorology and oceanography, there's the first tier of work, and you and it's called observer, because we're looking at the sky and looking at differences and identifying clouds, and so that fits perfectly, and no wonder I fit well in that job.
That is so neat. I didn't even know that was a role in. Oh, that's so cool. Did you liked it? Did you like being
Oh,
an
I loved
observer?
it.
I loved it. That was probably, when you talk about success, that was probably the first place I found true success. Um, Not understanding that my upbringing and the way I was actually enhancing that ability.
Ah, so we could break that down in different ways, huh? Well, can let's go to, you said first time, or perhaps the first time in your adult life where you experienced true success. Can you break that down for us? What you mean by true success? What was it that was different about your experience in that observer role versus the other roles or experiences you had where it didn't feel like true success?
Yeah, before I hop on that, let me go back to follower, because a leader that is referred to as a follower and they get kinda shaken, all ruffled in the feathers, it's an indicator of an inadequacy somewhere. A true leader is the best follower. A true leader can digress from their position in order to be the best follower and show the rest of the team how it's done. If you cannot do that, you need to check your inventory. Something's missing, right? So I just want to throw that in there because it's important.
It is important. It is important. And I think that that in and of itself, right, we could break that down into these ideas that we have of what it means to be a follower, and that there can be a sense of like loss of identity, loss of confidence, this kind of, I can't make my own decisions, so how could I be a leader in that way? But that's not the kind of follower I hear you describing here. So let's let's put the follower piece here to, because I think it might come back again, come
Mhm.
back to that, this different definition that you're using for follower, and see if it connects in our conversation as it continues around, you felt true success, you said those are the words you
Mhm.
used, in that observer role, which was different than maybe success that you thought you felt or should have felt in some other roles that you had. Can you tell us a little bit about what
Yeah.
Yeah.
differentiates that?
Yeah, so it's funny because success can be measured in several different ways. You can actually have a numerical, um, reflection of success. So in observation, the accuracy in your observation is what basically tells people that you are successful. So if I took an observation of the sky and I got all the clouds right and everything was right, the portions of the sky and the temperature and all that, and can be verified on the forecast, right? The forecast said this, your observation said this, and then both of those two meet, And the way a forecaster validates their success is they can match that observation because, of course, they're going down the road in time, and then time catches up to that forecast. And then on the observer side is, did all the instruments accurately say that what you said put on the document was actually right? And so it's a numerical satisfaction of success. In leadership, that's one piece. In leadership, how people grow is an indicator of success. Because if you can lead someone through their life cycle of their period with you, and they end up a whole lot higher in attitude, in knowledge, in execution of their job, in how much they're taking over the real estate, because what you want is that someone to come in, you develop them, and they can take your place. And for leaders, that's a little shaky, right? Because that only puts your date at the end of your trajectory in whatever organization you're in. But that is the true sign of success, that you raised a replacement.
So when you were in the observer role earlier on in your career, does some of what you just described, does that connect with what
Mhm.
helped you feel this truer meaning of success?
Yep. So there was a lot of observer of the month. Yeah, they go through a status check of all the things that were recorded, all the forecasts and all this stuff, and then whoever had the highest percentage was the observer of the month, and that was your indicator of success. There was a year I was observer of the month for the whole year. So I showed not only that I was able to do that job, but also among a peer of 4 or 5 that I did it the best. And although those were indicators of success as an observer, I still did not feel successful.
So it wasn't a true experience of success for you.
Nope.
It was only outwardly looking like what success is.
Yep. I checked all those boxes.
Yeah, this is a really important differentiator, right? Because it is so easy for us. I'll speak for myself. By the time I was 30, I had had my third child, owned my home, owned my car, earned my PhD, had been a licensed clinician for years already at that point. And so outwardly, I looked, right? Like you were talking, this outcomes based
Mhm.
type of success, which I think maybe some people do describe as true success. I don't describe that as true success, but it certainly is a measured form of success that so many of us, again, myself included, was there, feel like or think or believe, get sucked into this is what success is. This is what means I'm successful. This is what shows that I've achieved success. But then you don't feel successful and you're like, what in the world? Or the rat race never ends because there's always another thing that you have to do, or goal that you have to
Yes.
hit, right? Or something that you have to move towards, or carrot that you have to chase in order to keep up with that sense of success. Is that similar to what you experienced?
Yeah, and it's similar to where I would say 99% of the world is experiencing. Uh, yeah, it is. And the reason why I say that is that un until until in your life you find something that contradicts that, you can't even see it. You unfortunately, these last 3 months in my household, there's been several losses, personal life losses, and in those times, you start to reflect, "Hmm, was that really all important?" You know? Especially when you start inheriting people's things. You're like, "Wow, they held that in such high regard, and no one can touch that," and now everybody's touching it. And so when you look at the comparison of the 2, you know, in life and post life, you're like, "Wow, that really wasn't that important." And so a lot of the rat race that we get into is because we have these external demands from what from a system, right? We all live in systems, and those systems dictate what looks good and what looks bad. And for a person that, you and I love to, and I would say, prove our worth. We love to prove it because we're capable and we can do it, no problem. But there are some people that struggle to get up from bed every day. And so just them moving their legs and putting them on the floor is a success. They don't need all these accolades. They don't need the college degrees. They just need to plant their feet on the floor. And so it's funny how that goes up and down, both in the corporate life and in life. And then you realize that, wow, that I thought that was successful. And that's why we get these yes. And what else? The pursuit could be endless.
It definitely can be endless, and that was one of the things in my own growth journey that I had to recognize was realizing that I was wanting, feeling like I needed to, honestly, to prove that I was
Mhm.
worthy, of whatever, right? Mostly just connection and wantedness, and belonging. But that was something that was required for me to shift in order for me to redefine success
Yeah.
in a way that actually made a difference for me. Success bolstered by needing to prove myself was not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And ultimately, I don't believe that it is. I don't believe it can ever be sustainable.
No.
But I do believe that different people, like yourself and I, we have to go through those experiences and
Yeah.
learn from them, be willing to learn from them, so that we can decide, no, actually, no to this. Right? This is not what I want anymore. I had to experience some of those really challenging, and painful times in order for me to kind of get hit by that catalyst that helped me shift, helped me question, is there a better way? Is there a different way? Because this success, with the accolades, with the achievements, with all of those outcomes based, I'm not going to say that it's bad, and I'm not going to say that it's wrong.
No.
I am going to say it's not sustainable. It is external motivation that has its
Yeah.
place, but it cannot sustain internal inspiration that brings fulfillment. And we need to distinguish that. I know I have had to distinguish that, and have supported so many people that have had to distinguish that. Not an easy thing to distinguish, but so incredibly life changing. And I wonder, you're shaking your head a lot, so I wonder, Enrique, can you tell
Yeah.
us, like, does this connect with your journey?
Yeah, no, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on this one thing that happened while I was in service. It was at the very end of my career. I had just received notice that I did not make E9. So in the military, you have E ranks and O ranks, enlisted officers. And in the E ranks, enlisted ranks, I rose all the way up to E8. And I was at the last, I said, opportunity to make E9, and I was not selected. So I had 6 months to separate. So very quick, everybody thought, including myself and my family, that I was a shoo-in because just the way I had held my career. E9s represent 1% of the enlisted force. I mean, you can't get closer to, like, the top outside of E9. So, of course, I held that position in high regard, but that same year, within those 6 months, my community unanimously selected me as the first inaugural recipient of the best enlisted in that community, and I didn't feel nothing because what I thought success was that E9. In myself, I traded a 1% over the 1, and that's when you say it's not sustainable, it ain't.
It's not. It's not. And in order to try to make it sustainable, we actually, and those listening in that can resonate with this, I think will also agree with us, Enrique. It actually will cause us, it will force us to sacrifice what matters most in order to really try to sustain something that's not sustainable like that. We'll have to constantly sacrifice ourselves or our health or our relationships, something that really matters to us and actually brings fulfillment to our lives. We will have to sacrifice if we are to sustain that indefinitely. And that is why it is not sustainable, because then it robs you of life, these deep, rich, joyful, connective, like
It robbed me for sure.
a community that was connection, right?
Oh
A
yeah.
community that was it wasn't a reflection of some projected outcome or some algorithm or some outline that you had to meet check marks on. That's not what that was. What you were, what was like brought to you and for you was through connections, through relationships that brought that to you. But we can't,
And,
how can we feel that meaningfully if that's not where we're focused, if that's not part of our definition of success?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that it was the first one, right? So it was the very first award, so it didn't exist in my career lifespan. So this was a new thing. For all my 26 years, I thought E9 was that was it. That was the mountaintop. And so when you say robbed, it robbed me from accepting that my community knew better, that they knew that that was not what really mattered. Being spoken about and recognized, it was basically the People's Choice Award, right? That's what it was. And I couldn't relish that. I remember I said, "Wow, I really did not enjoy that, because of my paradigm of what success was."
And, okay, so if I were to have asked you the question, what matters more to you, status or relationships, what do you think you would have said?
Relationship.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting
yeah.
that that's so contradictory to then the definition of success that was being held onto so tight? And
Yep.
Yep.
I've seen that contradiction in myself time and time again, call myself out. We have to, be able and willing to do that. But what is our definition of success, right? We've got to ask ourselves that. Are we only focused on this outcomes based number of definition of success, specifically with regard to leadership, like we're talking about here today. Because as leaders, there is, let's be honest, there is pressure. There's very easily pressure to
Yeah.
get the top ranks or to achieve X, Y, or Z, right? Depending on where your leadership role or position is with regard to corporate or business structure of some sort. There are these numbers, right? There are these stats, there are these pressures that come with that. So then the question becomes, well, how do I navigate that without letting that be my definition of success?
The navigation of it is very tricky because if you look at the word relationship. Now, I'll tell you, Tony, in the last 2 weeks, I felt God tell me, "I made you for relationship." Now, you guys got this all wrong. Yeah, you did, but this is what I made you, obviously for glory, but then I made you for relationship. That's where you and get to enjoy life. And you can mix up things, and so it's very tricky in leadership because one of the things that I was taught as a leader, don't get too friendly with your team. And I'm like, how am I gonna know my team? I can't get too friendly because they won't break what their true things are, you know, struggles and what they're facing, and I can't get that from my seat. I have to go down and look at that. Even just the reference, I gotta go down. Where you going down? It's just across the road. So so it's very you have to understand that relationship is probably the key piece in leadership that most people are missing. And we're not talking about best friends here. What we're talking about, the root word of relationship, relate. Can you relate? And most people have leaders they can't relate to. Look at that. I don't go to those galas. I don't go to these things. I don't go to that. Can't relate with that person. And so that's where we miss the mark as leaders, relationship.
So what helped you to refocus, to redefine success in a way that, relationships weren't just something you said that you valued, but you internally embraced relationships as part of that experience, that definition of success for yourself? What helped you make that shift?
One night, I had uh, so in the Navy, when you make E7, which is the senior enlisted rank, things happen, right? These these rituals happen. But in one of those, I had invited all those that were selected to my home to, that doesn't happen on a normal basis as senior enlisted. So they came over, my wife was there, my kids were there, and we had little, what we call in Hawaii, poo-poo, little appetizers, right? And, they were all around, and just a peek into Senior Chief Acosta's life, right? One of them asked, and I didn't know this, but till after they left because my wife told me, but one of them came up to my wife and said, "Is this how he is here? Because it's not the same guy we work with." And after they were all gone, she goes, "Hey, babe, let me talk to you about something." I thank the good Lord he gave me one of those type of wives. That oh, well, she's wonderful, so I'm open to hear all the time. But in this case, she was like it was like one of those, "Let me talk to you about something." And I was like, "Well." What was this about? So she said, "Hey, young person came to me. They they saw you act out a person here. They asked me if that how you was always, and I replied, whoever he is at work, keep him there, because this is the guy I want at home." And it hit me like a ton of bricks because here I thought that I was the same guy, but I had been conditioned to not be.
Which is powerful for you to recognize because the military, right, is an entity of itself where that
Right.
kind of conditioning can happen with or without someone's awareness and you noticing that and making a
It
conscious shift.
it hurt. It hurt because in my life, I had tried to be the same person because I was tired of hearing you know, whatever you got going on home, let it stay over there. When you hear I was tired. I was really tired of that. It didn't work for me as a person growing up in the military, and I knew that it wasn't working for all these people that I was working with. So, I thought that I had that down, but obviously I didn't. And so, thank God my wife did bring it up, because the next day I went to work and I gathered everybody up, them and everybody else, and I said, "I was made aware last night that I'm 2 people, and that's not what I wanna be." And so I told them, and, it was a good thing because a lot of people learned from that seniors can accept fault and make it public so that you can garner support in being the person. And I gave them full authority that if they saw something that what they saw in my house and wasn't matching here, you tell me. And,
And so
yeah.
being a successful leader isn't about being right all the time,
Oh, no.
right? It's about also being open to flexibility and feedback and that connection, as you were saying, relationships, and having an open two-way street still with boundaries. Boundaries are necessary for us to have healthy interactions. But what I hear you saying, coming back to that follower
Mhm.
term that you used in the beginning, is this is what you mean by and kind of embracing the follower concept is I'm open to feedback from others. I'm open to observing others and seeing what they have to offer. I'm open to being flexible with maybe the way that I'm going about doing something. And so success as a leader isn't all about the hard hammer or getting it right or being in control of everyone all of the time
Right.
or never having any flaws or faults. Actually, in many ways it's the opposite. It challenges all of those conventional terms, that we associate with success in the leadership and workplace.
Yeah, in my life, I always try to live this. You can outlead me, but I won't let you outfollow. Because if I learn how not to follow, I've already stopped leading.
It's a
Yeah,
very
it's powerful.
strong, powerful statement. We all might need to sit with that, right? Just for a little bit with
Yeah.
ourselves to figure out even what that means for us.
And I'll give you a real quick example of that. I got to my command one day, it's Hawaii, so it's windy and you got debris everywhere. That's it. I'm not gonna wait till people show up. You know how to use a broom. Go get it. So I went in there, took my blouse off, was in my t-shirt, got boom, 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 boom. Took care of it. People came in. "Senior, what you doing? Oh my goodness." Yeah, yeah. Hey, I said, "If you'd like to help, that's fine. Don't make a big deal about it. Let's just get it done." So I go to a meeting that later that morning, and I'm telling this to an E9, and he goes, "What? I'm not sweeping. Those days are over." Instantly, he lost all credibility with me. Instantly, because of that statement. He is no longer willing to pick up a broom to show how to do it. He's just willing to tell people when to do it. That's not a leader.
A lot here for us to take and to consider. Are we willing to challenge ourselves in this way? Because moving up the ranks, which has its own connotations to it, right, is often associated with more power, more control, right? And that butts up against what I hear you talking about here and redefining success in a way that actually allows for relationships that are meaningful, that actually allows for there to be some space and room to breathe and to share and to exchange. And we mentioned in the beginning that faith is a part of this for you. And you mentioned God and hearing Him speak to you and you being open to that. Would you flow faith into part of your definition, your evolving definition of success? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, so faith is like the cornerstone of everything I do. Now, I mentioned that there were things that I was doing that I thought were right. They obviously weren't. So, although faith was the cornerstone, I had upbringings, I had teachings, I had education that taught me otherwise, and so I had to decide which one of those took precedence. Although faith has always been the cornerstone, each building block may have not been, right? Um, so how do you weave in faith into your leadership? A lot of people struggle with this because some believe that they have to be preaching all day long. Faith without works, and my faith is dead. So you have to enact faith, and if faith is to be a part of your leadership in life, it actually has to proof of life. Faith that does not show proof of life, you might as well just keep it in your house or your closet. So how do I bring that into leadership? I don't need to tell anyone my faith, but they must see it. If they can't see it, then I can't talk about it. That's my motto. And so, love, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, justice, uh, uh, being able to forgive, all these other things that kind of like encapsulate my faith. If people cannot see that on my daily happenings, I've just denied my faith. And so a lot of times leaders, what they do is they deny the fact that they believe daily. Or they'll go the other extreme. They'll be like, boom, what they call Bible thumping and and scare people off because you're not at a church. You're at a work site. And the most important thing we can do as leaders, if we want to integrate faith, is to live it. Don't talk about it, live it.
And that's something for all of us, I think, to think about too. It's something I agree with in as far as This is about redefining success, is about how we are showing up and how that is affecting our experience within ourselves, with others. And as you talk about faith, it connects so directly with that, right? You're saying, I'm not saying that you have to demand people show, believe a certain thing or agree with me, or that I have to kind of bash someone over the head with my beliefs. I'm not saying that that's the way to incorporate faith into leadership. What I am saying is that if I believe in this, then I embody it to the best of my ability, knowing that I'm going to mess up. Right? If I believe it, I'm going to embody it. And that takes more self awareness, which is interesting, bring us back to the beginning of the conversation, too. But self awareness and self accountability,
Mhm.
than I think we sometimes realize when we're talking about leadership, especially in corporate, in the workplace, places like the military, where there's a lot of forcefulness. Things are led with that often, this forcefulness or this demand or control or power. But we're kind of challenging those dynamics, right? A little bit
Yeah.
here with some of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and growth without growth doesn't happen outside of challenge, right? So you're gonna be challenged in one way or another. This just brings you to a point where you can consider how we like to say, consider your ways. Even in leadership outside of faith, you still have to consider your ways if you intend to grow and if you intend to lead any further. Sometimes your limitations on challenges or your avoidance of challenges will will be your final. That be it. You can't go any further, right? How John Maxwell said, there's ceilings and stuff, and the same is with leadership. Um, don't avoid the hard personal decisions. Leaders are great in heading, you know, head on those challenges that everybody else is dealing with. Don't avoid your own because they will come to bite you.
Avoiding certainly does not mean they're not there, right? They are
Right.
still there, doing what they do in the background, snowballing, growing. For sure. I've seen that firsthand many, 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 many times
Yeah.
over. Thank you so much, Enrique, for sharing your experience, your wisdom, your personal stories, your lived experience with what you have gone through as a leader, but as a person, as a person, as a whole person who cares about who he is in this world, about the faith that he demonstrates in this world, and about the way that he interacts with people. We need, I believe, to have these conversations, more and more and more and more of these kinds of conversations, so that we can really challenge the definition of success that leads so many people to actually not feeling successful, no matter how much they do, so that they can start to feel success in a different way. I want to end with a question with you, and then I'll share some goodies that you have for the audience. Now, with where you're at, in reflection of your life, both personal and professional, how would you say you define success? What is your redefinition of success currently?
For me, just right off the top of my head, it's a smile on somebody's face after interacting with. If I could get that every time, I'm doing good.
So much power to that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I know you have a gift that you would like to extend to our audience. You are the best selling author of two books, and so you would like to extend a signed copy of one of your books, one of your leadership books, which is
Yes.
right on topic, right? For one random individual who just decides to comment, to share, to contribute in some way in the comments below for this episode. Let us know, your thoughts, reactions, reflections, what's coming up for you. And Enrique will choose one of you lovely individuals to sign a book and send it to. Now, is that in the United States? Is that also outside the United States? Just to kind of give some parameters if they're there.
Yeah, they're welcome to comment. It is a random selection, right? So I don't know where exactly it is, but the important piece is that digest the information shared, comment, engage in relationship. This is where it happens, right? So, yeah, we'll select them randomly.
Beautiful, beautiful. So whether you live in the United States or outside of the United States, you're welcome to do this, and he's excited to share a signed copy of his book with him with you. Enrique, where's the best place for folks to connect with you if they are interested in either following your work or just following what you're putting out into the world? Where would you like them to go to find out more?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be the most central place, and there you can find all varieties of links to get to my website, to get to my books and things like that. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn, Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. I believe I'm the only one, and we would love to connect and share some comments.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Everyone that has joined us today, thank you all so much for spending your time, effort, energies with us today. If you're on YouTube, I do invite you to go ahead and share those questions, those comments, reflections, all of those contributions, share them below. That is one amazing way that you can connect and contribute in this space that we are cultivating together. Much, much, much success to each of you. Until next time. Links related to this episode can be found in the show notes section. Want to submit questions about success, satisfaction, healing, and relationships, health, or work? You can do that free and anonymous at drtonywarner.com, where you'll find other resources there as well. Did you benefit from this episode? You can subscribe, like, and share with another to pass it on because anyone can listen on the go with this podcast audio available on all major podcasting platforms.